Usually when we think about these monumental shifts in human history, like the Industrial Revolution or, I don't know, the dawn of the internet, we tend to picture these massive dramatic moments.
Yeah, we totally look for that cinematic montage.
Right. We imagine factories just springing up overnight or computers suddenly lighting up in every single home across the globe.
But the reality is usually a lot more subtle.
Exactly. Sometimes a revolution just looks like a slightly quieter delivery van turning onto your street. You see it, but you don't really hear it.
You definitely don't hear it.
And you probably don't realize that that single van represents one of the most complex, expensive, and just rapidly shifting infrastructure puzzles of our entire lifetime.
It's a massive undertaking.
It really is. So today, our mission is to give you the ultimate shortcut to understanding the electric vehicle landscape as we sit here in 2025 and 2026. We are cutting straight through the noise to answer the core questions, like, are we actually building enough chargers? How are massive corporate fleets electrifying without physically breaking the local power grid?
Which is a huge issue.
And maybe most importantly, what happens when the government policy driving all of this suddenly just hits a wall?
Because the underlying mechanics of what is happening right now are incredibly revealing, especially when you look at the raw data.
And we have a fantastic stack of sources to pull from for you today. We are unpacking Amazon's 2025 Rivian fleet update, the latest mobile charging strategy from EXO, some incredibly detailed fast charging data from Perrin covering full year 2025 and Q1 2026, an Atlas public policy report on federal EV programs, and a really massive infrastructure assessment from the Massachusetts EVICC.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this because I promise you by the end of this deep dive, you are going to have some major aha moments about the hardware and the policy being deployed right in your own neighborhood.
Yeah, and to really understand the charging landscape, you have to start with the baseline demand, with that delivery van on your street. Because before we even examine the public chargers that you might rely on for a road trip, we have to look at how the biggest private players are solving this puzzle.
Right, the corporate fleets.
Exactly. They're essentially forcing the infrastructure into existence out of sheer necessity.
And Amazon is like the prime example of that brute force scaling. I mean, the numbers in the source are wild. In 2025 alone, Amazon grew its fleet of Rivian electric delivery vans by 50%.
50% in 1 year.
Yeah. They now have over 30,000 of these custom-built EDVs on the road. And get this, in 2024, they delivered over 1 billion packages in the U.S. just using those electric vans.
Which is, well, moving 1 billion packages fundamentally shifts the entire logistics industry.
Oh, absolutely.
And what is critical to understand here is that these aren't just standard combustion vans that someone retrofitted a battery pack into.
Far from it. The source details how they're totally custom built for efficiency and honestly for driver retention.
Yeah, the features are pretty specific.
They feature these automatic bulkhead doors that literally open themselves as the driver reaches the destination. So they're saving like seconds on every single drop.
Which adds up when you're doing hundreds of drops a day.
Right. They have 360-degree visibility, ventilated seats, and they're rolling out these new all-wheel drive variants with a 30% larger battery pack, which is specifically for, mud and winter conditions.
But here's the thing. Putting 30,000 electric vans on the road creates a massive logistical nightmare behind the scenes.
The charging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazon basically had to become a localized utility company to pull this off.
You hit on the central tension of fleet electrification right there. Buying the vans is the easy part, right?
Yeah, writing the check for the trucks is easy. Upgrading the grid capacity to charge hundreds of them simultaneously overnight is the real bottleneck.
Because the data shows Amazon has installed over 17,000 EV chargers across 120 U.S. delivery centers. And globally, they're operating over 50,000 chargers.
Staggering.
How did they actually do that without just crashing the local power grids? I mean, I can't imagine a standard neighborhood substation just absorbing a depot of 200 vans all plugging in at 6 p.m.
They couldn't. I mean, if they relied solely on the existing grid, those demand spikes would trigger massive utility penalty charges.
Oh, like peak demand fees.
Right. Or worse, they'd cause localized brownouts. So to manage that immense power draw, Amazon had to deploy these really sophisticated microgrids at the depots.
Microgrids, so they're generating or storing their own power.
Storing mostly. They utilize on-site battery storage, and highly advanced smart charging software.
Okay.
So the system basically trickle pulls power from the public grid during off-peak hours, when power is cheap and plentiful. It stores it and then aggressively discharges it into the vans overnight.
So they're actively balancing the load locally.
Exactly. They isolate themselves from the grid's limitations.
But what if you don't have Amazon's billions of dollars to build a custom microgrid and trench concrete for 18 months?
Most companies don't.
Right. And that is the exact bottleneck a company called Exos is trying to exploit with their new charging hardware.
What's fascinating here is that fleet managers across the country desperately want to electrify.
Because of the fuel savings.
Right. The per-mile operational savings are undeniable at scale. But the utility permitting and trenching process is just agonizingly slow. It completely kills their momentum.
So Exos just announced an expansion to their Exos Hub mobile charging lineup to completely bypass that delay.
Yeah, the mobile units.
These hubs come in 3 capacities now. There's 210, 420, and a massive 630 kilowatt-hour version. And the starting price is roughly $158,000.
Which sounds like a lot, but for commercial infrastructure, it's really competitive.
Honestly, I look at this hardware and I just see a massive towable anchor power bank for semi-trucks, right?
That is actually a highly functional analogy. It fundamentally alters the timeline of fleet adoption.
How so?
Well, take the 420 kilowatt-hour unit, for example. That thing can charge 15 to 20 commercial vehicles. And here is the crucial engineering detail. It sits just under the 10,000-pound commercial weight threshold.
Oh, meaning you don't need a commercial driver's license to transport it.
Exactly. A standard 3/4-ton pickup truck can tow it.
That's wild.
So imagine a regional plumbing company, right? They buy an electric truck, but the city won't approve their charger permit for another year.
Which happens all the time.
All the time.
Mm.
So they just tow this massive battery into their parking lot, and they are operational in hours. No waiting.
And for the largest fleets, the source says you can daisy chain up to 10 of these hubs together for over 6 megawatt hours of power, all tied to a single grid connection.
Yeah, it's incredibly scalable.
But wait, is towing batteries around a permanent solution? It feels like a really clever but ultimately temporary Band-Aid.
Well, it acts as a Band-Aid initially,
Oh.
but the crucial detail in the Exos announcement is their upcoming UL 9540A certification, which is arriving in 2026.
Wait, unpack that for a second. What does a UL certification have to do with making a towable battery permanent?
Okay, so UL 9540A is an incredibly rigorous fire safety testing standard specifically for battery energy storage systems.
Gotcha.
It essentially proves that if one battery cell goes into thermal runaway, if it catches fire, that fire won't spread to adjacent cells or nearby structures.
Oh, I see.
So once Exos secures that certification, local fire marshals and building inspectors will actually allow these mobile units to be permanently installed directly next to buildings.
Without needing all the extra safety infrastructure.
Right. They won't require the massive setbacks and concrete blast walls they'd otherwise demand for a battery that size.
That's brilliant.
It really is. So it starts as a towable Band-Aid, but it smoothly transitions into permanent stationary infrastructure, saving these fleets hundreds of thousands of dollars in trenching and construction costs.
So private fleets are literally hacking the grid by putting it on wheels until the municipal paperwork catches up.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Okay, but let's transition from the private depot to the public grid. Private fleets are clearly figuring out their localized load balancing. But what happens when you take your personal EV on a cross-country road trip?
Right, the consumer experience. Well, the parent data on public fast charging deployment is pretty striking. We are seeing an absolute explosion in hardware right now.
Yeah, 2025 was a massive breakout year. We saw 18,000 new DC fast charging ports deployed.
Which is huge.
It's a 30% increase year over year. And then in the first quarter of 2026 alone, we added another 3,387 ports.
So the pace is accelerating.
Exactly. We are sitting at over 73,000 public fast charging ports across the U.S. But the landscape of who is actually building these stations is shifting dramatically, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, Tesla historically dominated this space with an iron grip.
Right, the supercharger network.
Yeah. And in Q1 2026, they still deployed 880 ports, and they build these massive installations averaging over 12 ports per station.
But their market share dropped.
It did. Their market share of new ports actually dropped to 37.6%.
Because the rest of the market has finally woken up and started deploying capital.
Exactly. Competitors like Iona, Ready, ChargePoint, and big box retailers like Walmart are rapidly catching up.
And they are building much larger stations than their earlier attempts, too, averaging 4.6 ports per station now.
Which is a big improvement from the old single charger stations.
Totally. But this brings us into the territory of the format war.
Ah, yes, the plugs.
Yeah. In late 2025, 18% of new non-Tesla ports featured the NACS connector, the Tesla-style plug.
Right.
By Q1 2026, that bumped up to 21%. But still, 73% of non-Tesla ports are sticking with the older CCS standard.
The industry is just deep in a transitional period right now. Automakers are migrating their vehicle hardware, which results in networks having to support both standards.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I look at this data and I think about you, the listener, trying to navigate this on a highway.
It can be confusing.
Right. As a consumer, isn't a fragmented market with a dozen different companies, multiple proprietary apps, and competing connector standards infinitely more annoying than just having a unified, highly reliable monopoly?
In the immediate term, yes, it absolutely introduces friction.
It's a headache.
It is. Adapters are simply a reality of the EV ecosystem for the next few years. But, and this is key, a fragmented market is the ultimate indicator of a maturing utility landscape.
I don't know. I need convincing on that. Friction usually kills consumer adoption.
Okay, think about how we distribute liquid fuel today.
Like gas stations.
Right, you don't have a single unified monopoly running every gas pump in the country.
Sure.
You have regional operators, grocery store networks, independent travel centers. That fierce competition drives innovation, it lowers pricing over time, and it ensures broad grid resilience.
Okay, I see what you mean.
The fact that OEM-backed networks and massive retailers are pouring billions into this proves they view EV charging not as some tech novelty, but as a foundational utility.
Because there's real money to be made.
Exactly. You actually want multiple players fighting for your charging dollar because it forces them to improve uptime, offer better amenities, and build in locations a monopoly might just ignore.
Well, let's talk about the economics of those locations, because the Perrin data reveals something deeply counterintuitive.
Utilization drop.
Yes. Despite all this rapid building, in Q1 of 2026, the average utilization rate for fast chargers weakened slightly, dipping down to 15.6%.
And a dropping utilization rate usually triggers widespread panic in any normal retail business.
Wait, I am stuck on that metric. 15.6% utilization means that highly expensive piece of hardware is sitting completely empty almost 85% of the time.
Basically, yes.
Who is paying for all that dead time? How do these operators not just bleed capital and go bankrupt?
It is what we call the utilization paradox of infrastructure development. This dip isn't a failure. It just means supply is temporarily outpacing demand. Because even with that percentage dip, 2025 still saw a record 141 million charging sessions. The total volume of energy dispensed is actually climbing aggressively.
So it is kind of like a city building a massive new multi-lane highway. The day the ribbon is cut, the highway looks totally empty.
Exactly.
But you have to build the expanded capacity before the traffic arrives.
Precisely. If you wait until the old two-lane road is gridlocked to start pouring concrete late,
you're already way too late.
Right, the local economy just grinds to a halt. For charge point operators, the mathematical sweet spot is actually between 200 and 220 sessions per port per month.
Really? Why not aim for 100% utilization?
Because if utilization pushes too far past 20%, drivers start experiencing consistent wait lines. And once that happens, consumer trust collapses. They won't come back to your station.
Oh, that makes sense.
So the dead time you mentioned is actually factored directly into their long-term capital models.
And we are definitely seeing the reality of those wait lines in certain geographies. Like Washington, D.C. is heavily congested with a 37.2% utilization rate.
Which is massive.
That is over 12 sessions per port per day. Meanwhile, places like Alaska are hovering way down at 3.2%.
And that extreme geographic divide is exactly what's driving the shifting economics of charging prices.
Yeah, let's look at the prices. The national average pricing is holding relatively stable at 53 cents per kilowatt hour.
Which is a good baseline.
But in supply-constrained or high electricity cost states, operators are charging a massive premium. Hawaii is at 87 cents per kilowatt hour. New Jersey is at 65 cents.
And we are also seeing behavioral pricing models emerge.
Right, the time of use pricing. We're seeing operators in congested metros like New York and Los Angeles implementing really aggressive time of use rates to manage grid demand.
Yeah, so they will charge you double to plug in at 5 p.m. when everyone is getting off work and cooking dinner, compared to plugging in at midnight.
This raises an important question, though, about consumer behavior. With pricing fluctuating so wildly by time and region, you would expect EV drivers to aggressively shop around for the cheapest electron.
Right, similar to hunting for cheap gas.
Exactly. I mean, I will definitely drive an extra 2 miles to save a few cents on a gallon of gas.
Most people will.
Mm.
But the EV market is behaving completely differently right now.
Yeah.
Demand is highly inelastic.
Meaning price doesn't dictate behavior.
The data indicates drivers are not cross-shopping for price. They're shopping almost exclusively for reliability.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. When you pull off the interstate with a 5% battery in the middle of nowhere, the premium simply doesn't matter. You don't care if it costs 10 cents more per kilowatt hour.
You just want it to work.
Exactly. You just need the hardware to communicate with your car and initiate the session on the first try.
Which perfectly explains why the pairing reliability index improving to 93.5% nationwide is such a vital metric.
Uptime is everything.
The private sector knows uptime is the only thing dictating their revenue stream. But, and this is a big transition here, the massive accelerator behind all of this private sector building has been government policy.
It's been the foundation of the whole push.
So what happens when that engine suddenly shuts off?
That is easily the defining economic cliff of the next decade for this industry.
Let's look at the Atlas Public Policy Report. We have the federal NEVI program, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. It's a $5 billion initiative.
A huge injection of capital.
Yeah. And so far, 48 states have obligated $526 million of that, awarding contracts for nearly 4,000 fast chargers.
And remember, this specific capital was designed to fill the geographic gaps where private operators couldn't justify the economics yet.
Like those long, desolate, rural highway corridors.
Exactly. Places where utilization will be low for years.
And state ambitions rely really heavily on this federal momentum. Like if we look at the Massachusetts EVICC assessment, it shows Massachusetts currently ranks 4th in the nation for chargers per capita.
Which is a great start.
It is, but their 2030 climate goals mandate 900,000 light-duty EVs on the road and a 34% reduction in total emissions.
That's only a few years away.
Right. And to support that kind of density, they estimate they will need over 46,000 public ports. They literally have to triple their current deployment pace in just 4 years.
Tripling deployment in that time frame is a staggering logistical and financial hurdle.
And they are trying to force it through this complex web of state-level mechanics. They use initiatives like the MOREV program, which relies on consumer rebates to artificially lower the sticker price of the cars at the dealership.
Right.
And they run that alongside massive VIP grants, which physically pay businesses and municipal fleets to install the charging hardware.
But the policy winds at the federal level are shifting rapidly.
It's extremely rapidly. And before we detail this next part, I need to be crystal clear with you, the listener.
Yes, this is important.
We are strictly reporting the market conditions and legislative actions identified in the EVICC and Atlas texts. We do not endorse these viewpoints, and we take absolutely no political sides here. Zero. We are merely analyzing the factual landscape of how policy shifts impact the infrastructure market.
Our role is strictly to interpret the data and explain the ripple effects on the industry's balance sheets.
Exactly. So factually, the sources outline some severe political headwinds. We are seeing the rescission of California's emissions waiver, which previously allowed states to set stricter vehicle standards than the federal government.
Right.
The EPA is also rolling back the endangerment finding. And for anyone unfamiliar, the endangerment finding is the legal bedrock from 2009 that gave the EPA the authority to regulate greenhouse gases under the Clean Air Act.
So rolling that back fundamentally alters federal regulatory power over vehicle emissions moving forward.
It does. And furthermore, Congress has eliminated the federal EV tax credits, which end in September 2025.
And the charging infrastructure credits expire shortly after, in June 2026.
So we are staring down a massive infrastructure cliff.
We really are. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Atlas report estimates the U.S. needs between $60 billion and $195 billion invested in public charging by 2035 just to support the transition.
That is a staggering amount of money.
It is. And with federal subsidies evaporating, that financial requirement doesn't just magically vanish.
So the government essentially paid for the foundation of the house, but now private companies and states have to pay to build the walls and the roof.
Yeah.
And they have to do it using only the pennies they make off session charging fees.
That is exactly the dynamic we're facing. The financial burden shifts heavily onto state budgets, local electric utilities, and the private market.
Those regional network operators we discussed earlier.
Exactly. They will have to shoulder the immense cost of network expansion entirely on their own balance sheets, without the safety net of federal grants.
Which makes that 15.6% utilization rate and the 53 cents per kilowatt hour price vitally important. Without federal grants covering their capital expenditures, operators have to extract profitability directly from the driver to fund future expansion.
Exactly. The economics of owning and operating an EV charger are being completely rewritten as we speak.
So what does this all mean? Let's take a step back and look at the whole picture here. We are in the awkward, chaotic, but deeply exciting adolescence of a new global infrastructure.
Yeah, growing pains are absolutely inevitable, but the pace of innovation and deployment remains unprecedented.
It really does. Private fleets like Amazon are building complex microgrids to manage massive overnight power loads.
While others are completely bypassing utility delays with those towable, UL-certified mobile hubs from Exis.
And public charging networks are expanding rapidly, fighting localized congestion and bracing for this post-subsidy reality where private capital really has to carry the torch. So the next time you see a delivery van on your street or watch someone plug in at a grocery store, you aren't just looking at a vehicle. You now understand the profound, localized web of microgrids, utilization mathematics, and shifting legislation actively making that single moment happen.
It is an entire utility sector being rebuilt from the ground up in real time.
It's wild.
Mhm.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into these sources today. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, I like these.
We talked about Exos and these massive mobile chargers that can be towed around by a standard pickup truck, right?
Yeah, the hubs.
Well, as EV batteries inevitably get larger and more efficient, could the future of charging look less like permanent concrete gas stations?
Mhm.
What if instead we see dynamic, algorithm-driven pop-up power grids, like massive batteries that physically move around a city based on real-time traffic, weather, and localized demand, meeting the cars exactly where they are rather than forcing the cars to come to them?
That is a fascinating scenario.
Something to think about the next time you plug in. Keep asking questions and stay insanely curious. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.